So, ladies and gentlemen, about to take the stage is Mr. David Schreffler, Managing Director, International Markets, Kore.ai. David is a leader and team builder with a unique combination of enterprise, channel, and on-demand SaaS success. In addition to true international operational experience, he has extensive experience in general management and field operations in large and startup organizations with up to $200 million revenue responsibility. And in each case, David's leadership doubled company revenues. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to put your hands together and give a special round of applause and welcome to David, because this is his first time speaking at an event in India. Let's put our hands together and make some noise for Mr. David Schreffler.
Thank you, everyone. Pleasure to be here. It's not my first time in India, for sure, and actually I'll get into that a little bit, but it's a real pleasure to be able to share some of the experiences that, not just that I have, but that our company has, not just in conversational AI, but also in generative AI, and how these two have really started to come together. So there we go. Some interesting statistics about 30% of the boards of our companies are personally interested in making sure that generative AI is on the agenda, and about a third of the respondents say that their organizations are using generative AI now. And actually, I'm kind of interested. Raise your hand if your company is using generative AI in some sort of production capacity right now. Keep them up for just a second. So that looks to me like 15%, something like that. What's interesting is then how you got from the experimental stage into the production stage, because there's always some risk with generative AI. And I've been using this little slide for about the last year. What we did is we took Romeo and Juliet and sent the summary into ChatGPT and said, in 20 words or less, summarize Romeo and Juliet. He did a pretty good job. It says, two young lovers from feuding families are forced to make tragic choices that ultimately lead to their deaths. That's pretty good. So then it was kind of fun. It's like, okay, now do that in 10 words. And so then in 10 words, it's star-crossed lovers take tragic actions that end in death. Oh, that's still pretty good. Now let's do that in 5 words. Love, hate, and death. By the way, that's 4 words. Anyway, and then finally, 2. So love kills. Now, what's instructive about this is that it's what generative AI is doing is providing some responses that sound right, that sound believable, but maybe aren't right. Here's another example. How many countries start with the letter V? And so ChatGPT said, well, there's 5, and here are the 5. Oh, but take a look at number 1 and number 5. So you say, are you sure? And so ChatGPT came back and said, oh, I'm sorry. Actually, there are 4. And so you say, well, but check again. And ChatGPT came back with, oh, there are 5. And there's the 5th. So again, it's hallucinating, right? So there are, and these challenges are becoming pretty well known to us by now. So for those enterprises that are using generative AI in production, they're having to overcome these challenges. And the industry in general really needs a set of tools that will allow us to productively use generative AI in a safe, responsible, predictable, and accurate way. It's really interesting here that McKinsey is saying that generative AI is going to drive something like $4.4 trillion of value in just the next few years. And I really like the matrix, actually. And if you take a look at the highest value in terms of the impact in dollars, and then the percent of impact on functional spend, look what's over in the top right. Experiences. This is all about customer, not just customer, I'll get into that in a bit, but this is all about experiences. And so with generative AI, we can drive tremendous customer experiences and enterprise experiences with exceptional value. It's interesting also to note that by 2026, something like 75% of the businesses are going to have adopted generative AI. Now think about that. We're midway to 2024, so we have, let's say, another 24 months when instead of 15% of us raising our hand, 75% of us raised our hand and said we're using generative AI in production. So there's a whole lot of work that we are going to have to do over the next 2 years. So we're going to introduce how it is that we can help with adopting the generative AI in a safe and predictable way. Now, these are some of the challenges. And some of the challenges here on the left-hand side, the controllability of the output, the accuracy of the output, we've already talked about. But then there's a lot of news around the IP litigation that's happening, where ChatGPT is being sued for having used YouTube, and there's tremendous IP protection issues, not only around what the large language models were used to do the training, but also the protection of your own IP should you be using the large language models themselves. There's tremendous latency. In fact, in the realm of experiences, if you're interacting either with a live agent or a virtual agent, the response time that's acceptable is something in the 3 or 4 seconds. If it's longer than that, then it's not a very good experience. Well, large language models themselves, oftentimes, even ChatGPT 4.0, oftentimes have latency of up to even 10, 12 seconds. So again, one of the big problems with large language models and generative AI is how do I get the response times still along within the accurate answers? There's governance challenges, there's tremendous cost challenges. There's many issues around the cost of using large language models. And of course, you can do things like you can do some caching, you can do some prompt engineering to reduce the prompt size and the tokens that are used, but still that requires a whole lot of specialist understanding how to do all those things to reduce your cost. And then finally, some of the privacy concerns that we talked about. So those are the problems. And then doing the modeling, you have to do things like prep the data and understand which model is the best model for this particular task, and do the deployment of the APIs and et cetera, and then build the applications. So there's a lot of steps that you're going to have to go through. And by the way, I am hurrying a little bit just because of time. But these steps in building out the models and the prompting and then the applications that go with that to use that, it's a very code-intensive and specialist-intensive set of tasks. And then what you're really trying to achieve is this Goldilocks zone, where in order to have a productive use of generative AI, you need to find that middle zone where you're balancing the accuracy of the answers, the cost of the operations, and the latency in using those models. The bigger the model is, the more topics that it can cover, but then you're going to have more latency because of the large model, and the cost of that large model is increasing with the size of it, right? But then the accuracy is at risk because the model is covering so many different topics and have been trained so generically. What we see the industry doing now, of course, is heading towards highly tuned, highly trained small language models so that you get around some of these issues. And you also reduce some of the hallucinations. When you're putting the large language models and generative AI to work, if you're using just a standalone public LLM, it's very good at a couple things. It's very good at natural language understanding. And it's very good in terms of being able to prompt the model and then get some sort of response from it. But for enterprise use, then there's all the additional things that you're going to have to do in order, and this kind of references back to that prior slide, all these additional things that you're going to have to do in order to use it productively. So there's a lot of noise in the marketplace right now. Every day there's a new large language model coming out. Now there's small language models coming out. Each vendor is wanting you to use their particular version. And so there's a real risk of vendor lock-in. Every day I'm seeing in my LinkedIn feed something new around, oh, well, here's a new generative AI thing. And so what the industry needs is some clarity. So at Kore, we're trying to provide that clarity. And Kore, we've been in conversational AI for 10 years. I remember when we first started, it was known as chatbots back then. And then we introduced machine learning into it. And then we introduced yet another model and a third model. We introduced a knowledge graph and ontology. And then we laid deep neural networks over top of that. And so the progression over the number of years has been astounding, and the change in the technology has been astounding. But over that 10 years, we've really accomplished a lot. We now have about 500, I think the slide says 400, but we have about 500 large enterprise customers, and you can see some of the logos down here. And some of those customers are doing hundreds of millions of interactions using conversational AI and generative AI. After this session, love to tell you more about it at the booth, but we have like eBay, who when they will finish their full rollout, they will be doing nearly 1 billion interactions per year. Right now, our customer base are doing about 6 billion. I think that's up there somewhere. Our customers in total are doing about 6 billion interactions through virtual assistants, and some of them using generative AI as well. So that's, we have about 1,000 people in the company. And one thing that I want to point out here, we have 600 of those 1,000 in R&D. And that focus on innovation is what allows us then to take our roots that have been in conversational AI, plus our experience over the last 2 years in generative AI, and combine that to bring great solutions to the marketplace. Now, we're pretty proud of ourselves. Our customers like us a lot, but even the analysts say very good things about us, where for 2 years when Gartner had published their Magic Quadrant, we were the leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for 2 years, for the 2 years that they published. They're skipping this year, but Forrester came out now this year with their own version of Magic Quadrant, the Forrester Wave, and once again, we're the leader in that quadrant as well. Why? Because of the focus that we have on innovation and the partnering that we do with our customers in delivering to them the combination of conversational AI and generative AI. Now, coming back to experiences, so Kore, we are focused on enabling you to deliver the very best experiences possible for both the customers, which I think is the first one here, customer experience, but then also for employee experience. So helping your employees with co-pilots and virtual assistants to help them in their job, but also delivering agent-based experiences. So why not have a virtual assistant that is actively reading the conversation between a customer and an agent, or actively listening to the phone call between the customer and the agent, and that virtual assistant pre-retrieving for the agent all the answers to the questions that the caller is asking. So the agent isn't having to go search for something. A virtual assistant is already delivering it. So agent experience is very important too. We also are seeing that there's a growing demand for a co-pilot to help employees when they are using the various custom applications that the enterprises have developed and deployed for them, using a co-pilot to navigate across those different systems so that it makes the job of the employee a whole lot easier. Let me say just one more, and then I'll move on. Something that we are seeing as maybe the biggest and highest demand right now is being able to, and this is known now as a RAG operation, but being able to consume all of the policies and all the documents that might be within your enterprise, whether that information is structured or unstructured, consume that and then understand that and then make that available to your customers as appropriate and to your employees as appropriate. Unlocking that what is otherwise hidden knowledge and hidden information is really key to improving the experience for your customers and your employees. I would love to take you through the stack. That's about a 30-minute conversation right there. And the summary of this is that our entire platform is built upon a set of service layers that consume and use language models, big and small, generative AI, and other foundational layers. And then we have the three platforms on top. The one on the left, the conversational or XO, Experience Optimization Platform, that produces virtual assistants of any use case. That is what we have been the industry leader for all these years now. Increasingly, the deployment and use of Search AI as a platform to unlock all the hidden information within your enterprise to serve that up for your customers and for your employees. And now finally, the third platform that I've been hinting at, and that is the Gale platform, which allows you to use a no-code platform to build and train large language models or small language models specific for your enterprise. And it has all the tooling to do things like it has a full guardrail framework within it. It has a full prompt engineering and prompt comparison framework. It allows you to use different base models and therefore not have vendor lock-in and have a common set of tooling across all of that so that without writing code, you can have your own LLMs that can be used for conversational and non-conversational use cases. So I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of this with you. Do come by the booth right over there, and hopefully we can share a little bit more about how conversational AI and generative AI have come together to fuel much, much better experiences. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Schreffler, for that enlightening session.